to address if we become aware of them. One such issue are issues of fraud, non-compliance with laws, or non-compliance with regulations. And again, this is going to sound very similar, if not identical, to the types of things we would do in an audit engagement as well. Let's take a look. So when we're following the SARs, we have to be cognizant of the fact that there could be fraud, right, which we affectionately call, well, that's lying, or at least that's lying through your financial statements. We also have to consider non-compliance issues, which are basically cheating. So we've got lying and cheating. The only one we've left out is stealing. We won't worry about that for right now. So what do? We become aware of something. Well, first off is to communicate it to what they call here the appropriate level of management. Or as I like to say, you don't go to the person you think is committing the fraud. You go one level above them. If necessary, that could be senior management or even above that. The point why we do it is twofold. One, we want them to be aware of the situation. Maybe they're not. But the other is to see how do they regard it? What do they react to it? Now, one of the questions we're then going to ask management is to say, well, if this incident is true, if there is fraud, if there is non-compliance, what impact will that have on the financial statement? So first question, what do we do once we become aware of fraud or some issue of non-compliance? Well, first and foremost, management needs to be alerted, but we're going to do it to an appropriate level, which basically means don't go telling the person that you think is responsible for the fraud. Go a level above them. Now, this serves two purposes. One, it informs management. They may be completely unaware of it, and so we're providing a useful, beneficial piece of information. But we're also interested to see their reaction. How do they respond as a result of what we've told them? Does this cause the financial statements to be materially misstated? And then we have to consider, will this have any other implications for the report? Now, that could be an audit report, or in this case, for a SARs engagement, a review report, or even in the case of a compilation. Even without assurance in a compilation engagement, we still may become aware of incidents of fraud and noncompliance, and we still have to follow through on those issues in the same basic way. Now, what happens if, as a result of the incident, we believe that has caused a material misstatement in the financial statements? Well, two things. One, we're going to want some additional information. This has now become a bigger issue for the financials, and so we want to make sure that we've got our documentation and our procedures covered. And there's likely going to be the need to revise the financial statements in some way. So we'll need that updated information as well. Now, what happens if your client says, no, we're not going to give you that additional information or revised information? That is good cause for withdrawal from that engagement. I always like to remind, withdrawal is always an option, but it's always seen as the option of last resort. But we jump to it anytime we believe that the client is trying to deliberately mislead. All right, some other considerations. What if it's an inconsequential matter? Well, then there's no requirement to communicate that. I often use the example of, we found somebody who had broken the law because they stole a pencil. Yeah, is it consequential? No. And so there's no need to communicate that. Can you communicate this orally? Can you just have a sit-down meeting? Yes, but as you might guess, we need to document that meeting. If we believe that the fraud or the noncompliance actually involves the very highest levels of the organization, as in the owner of the business, well, then we definitely need to consider withdrawal and or talking to legal counsel for any possible repercussions of what's going on. What about confidentiality? Now, we know that as accountants, as CPAs, we do have a duty of confidentiality. We're not there to broadcast information about this client to anyone who wants to hear it. However, it's always worth remembering this does not comprise something like accountant-client privilege. There are specific instances that require us to breach confidentiality. Interestingly enough, one of those is legal and regulatory requirements. So you could imagine non-compliance might very well require us to disclose this outside of the entity. Inquiries from successor accountants or a proper legal subpoena are a couple of other examples when we would be able to, if not required to, breach confidentiality. All right, so now we've recapped what we have to do in a SARs engagement if we become aware of fraud or non-compliance with laws and regulations. More to come. See you on the next one.